I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I've been told there's a storm coming, so Gwen says no superfluous conversations this evening. Sorry, other than Gwen, no one's allowed to. Sorry, that was not fair. All right, we are going to start with a special event. We do have one of our longest serving board members is retiring from the board from actually his second stint on the board. Robert Harris served on the board from February '97 until November of 2005. So those 8 years weren't enough. He came back in February of 2018 through the end of last year and is joining us this evening. He's also been chairing the Access Paratransit Committee that is, we know, leading some of the forefront of what's going on in the industry. And the community thanks you, and I thank you, and I appreciate all your counsel and support in questioning when we're not doing things right, and we appreciate so much. So on behalf of that, for your years of service, the entire board would like to say thank you, and we would like to present you as a Royal Coach Person.
Get it out.
So know ye by these present that Robert Harris has, by dint of effort, inspiration, commitment to the development and betterment of public transportation, has been selected for the honor of Royal Coach Person by Southwest Ohio Regional Transit Authority on this date, February 27th, 2024, signed by Daryl and myself and supported by the entire board.
All right.
Congratulations.
Go Metro!
All right, can we put this here for you?
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. And if anybody else wants to say thank you, feel free. Yeah, no. All right, thanks. What a great way to start, and small recognition for a lot of great hard work. So we have one citizen that wanted to make a statement. So if anybody else wanted to and didn't sign up, please let me know. But otherwise, Brad Simmons from Anderson Township. Good evening.
I came down and basically asked what is going on with the 24 line. It used to go directly downtown, but now it subverts downtown and ends up in North Side. And I went through all the schedules, and it seems to be with the exception of a few, especially crosstown, every neighborhood kind of ends up down in the government square except for the 24 line now, which I know a lot of people in Anderson Township are pretty upset about because it makes it way more complicated to get downtown. You have to transfer. There's missing buses lately, and I'm just wondering why that is. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Just the way this process works is we don't get into but we're going to get your phone number and make sure that you get a call and explain what's going on and if there's better ways to get you where you need to go.
Okay, and then I guess the last thing I wanted to add, how many signatures is it going to take to bring it back the way it was?
It doesn't quite work.
Maybe it doesn't, but I'm
Get a
asking.
call, and so we'll talk through what, make sure
Okay,
the team knows what you're looking for, and we'll find the
sure.
best way to
All
get
right,
it for you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Tanisha, we get this. Yeah. All right. Thanks. If you wait 1 second, I think a couple of guys could explain it to you right now. He was
Yeah, look like
he was
they're
in a
gonna
hurry.
beat him up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
sorry.
Then
Yeah.
I will touch on a few chairman updates. Starting with those of you that got to attend the Transportation Infrastructure Fund, the MTIP. Remember what the Metro Transportation Infrastructure Fund signing was great. Always a wonderful event that we, the community is getting the $27 million, $27.8 million. Really appreciate it. Great things for the community. Also got a nice update on all the good work from the first couple of years of the program that's starting to really pay off. So, but connected to all that and the development that we're doing around things like BRT, we have a special guest that I'm going to yield my time to. So I'd like to invite City Council member Reggie Harris to address the board.
Oh, great. And I have my PowerPoint over here. This is very fancy. I love this. I have a podium. So I want to start off. So good evening. Hello. My name is Reggie Harris, Cincinnati City Council member, Chair of Budget and Finance. And I've had the privilege of working with Mayor Piraval and our planning department and many partners on Connected Communities, which is Cincinnati's first take at comprehensive zoning reform to think about combating the housing crisis that we see nationally, but also in the city of Cincinnati. I want to start off by giving a big shout out and a big statement of gratitude to CEO Haley and Chair Cassie, because as we were developing this policy, we were in consistent communication with SORTA, because what we see Connected Communities, we see it as a complement to the investments that SORTA has made in reinventing Metro and building out a comprehensive bus system. I often find myself out in the community saying, you hear folks say like, oh, our bus system isn't great. I was like, that's an outdated model. Right, that's absolutely an outdated model, and we began to outline all of the work that's been happening. So we see this as an extension of that. So we can I do a slide, or someone's clicking for me?
I'm working.
Oh, you're clicking it for me. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So why Connected Communities, right? We want Cincinnati to be the best city that we can possibly be. And it's a people-focused approach to comprehensive zoning reform. We'll move on. Based in this is, right, we want folks to live here. We want folks to be able to afford to live here. We want folks to enjoy living here. And we want folks to be able to stay here through the life cycle. And so often we hear stories of what I like to call boomerangs, folks who grew up in Cincinnati. Maybe they went away to college, or they went away and they came back, and they have families and they want to live in the neighborhood next to their parents, and they don't have the housing to meet where they are in life. And so we want to be able to say, each neighborhood, you can have generational living. Let's go to the next slide. And so we know the problem, right? Home prices are rising rapidly. We also know in our city, and through our partnership with the Chamber, housing construction is lagging. I don't mean to be too rude to our neighbors to the north, but Dayton, Ohio is outpacing us in construction. And we know a huge part of that is zoning is capping our supply, right? And supply and demand is a real economic principle that is having major impact on our housing affordability and our housing availability. We'll go to the next slide. This is a slide I'm sure many of you have seen, but looking at housing prices relative to wage increases just draws a very stark picture of what we're dealing with and helps us to understand how we need to combat this. Let's go to the next slide. It is important to note, though we have seen major development in OTR and in the Central Business District and in Walnut Hills and Mount Auburn, on whole, right, the majority of our neighborhoods have seen zero housing growth. So I want to be very clear, this is what the data tells us. And so sometimes that's a very hard reality for folks to swallow, because they're like, well, this building went up, but this building went up. But when you think about where we were relative to where we are now, we've seen zero housing growth in a vast majority of our city. Go to the next slide. And again, this is the slide I sort of previewed about where we are and what we call our peer cities in terms of development. Next slide, please. Thank you. I want to explain this because this is really important to understand our model. So between 2017 and 2023, this pie chart represents all of the housing that came before the zoning commission, the planning commission for housing variances, right? This is what they're saying for density variances. So these are all of the projects that said, hey, we need to do more to make this project work. If we had not approved 50% of them, we would have lost 500 units. So why is that important? We have a framework where 50% of the time you have to go through a variance process to make the project work. So that tells you something's wrong with the framework. Next slide, please. And so we want to visualize what we're saying. So right here, I think 68% of our city, or Gus is 70% of our city is zoned single family, right? So then look at this. So you have this zoning for maximum building size here. Let's go to the next height. And so you fit a single family home. And so we see this looks like a typical neighborhood. But the reality is in that space, if we go to the next slide, you can add a 2-family. Doesn't change the character of the block. Next slide. Got a 3-family. Fits, doesn't change the character. Next slide. You can do 4-family, right? We have not changed the lot size. We haven't changed the setback. We haven't changed the height. And yet we've added 4 new units to just one parcel of land. And when we look at the data that tells us for neighborhoods that want amenities, you need at least 12 units of housing per half acre to be able to support amenities. So you can see how very quickly this math game gets us to thriving and sustainable neighborhoods. Next slide. And we know this. When supply does not meet demand, prices go up. Next slide. And when we think about like how this works, we think about a typical neighborhood, right? You have a mixture of low, moderate income neighborhoods, right? And not any vacancies. All of the housing's full. Next slide. And then folks come in, right? Folks who may have a little bit more money. So what happens? Naturally, the market adjusts. And so you begin to displace low and moderate income neighbors, right? And then you have this displacement we see, what we've seen nationally. But when we're able to meet demand, next slide, please, that we are then able to sort of move towards that utopia of mixed income housing. Next slide, please. And so when you think about nationally, right, the percent changes in homes and median rent estimates, we read about this all of 23 and 22 about Cincinnati. 24% increase in rent growth. 24%. Negative 3% increase in homes. So just want to make this very stark that we cannot address our housing crisis without addressing supply. We cannot subsidize our way out of this. There is no amount of money that will get us out of this hole when it is not coupled, right, with other interventions, including zoning, including money, including developers, including streamlining processes. Right, next slide. Let's skip through this. You get the point. I think I've made the point. I'm getting the nods of like, we got you. We're picking up what I'm putting down, right? Okay, good. But full price, not half price, right? Okay, thank you. And then there's also a racial equity component to this, right? And so we know that single family zoning worked hand in hand with redlining to segregate neighborhoods. Single family zoning is the most expensive housing to build. Right, it's the most expensive housing to build, to buy, to own, right? And so it plays a major part in racial segregation. Let's go to the next slide. And so this is our solution to one part of the problem. Let's go to the next slide. Restrictive zoning limits housing production. So we know about required parking. Parking is very expensive, takes up space. We actually require units to be larger than they need to be. There is a real market for smaller units, right? restricting space that we are allowed to build on, and so just putting arbitrary caps on verticality and setback, and then really sort of pushing low density housing types. Let's go to the next slide. And then we know the consequences, so we made that point. We'll go through. And so what does this mean from us? So in March of 2022, former Councilmember Liz Keating proposed a density bill that was not as comprehensive of this. I thought it was a great bill. And so bright-eyed, optimistic, first-term Councilmember Reggie Harris was like, yeah, let's go for it. It failed miserably. Oh my God, it went down in flames. It was me and Liz by ourselves, like, yay, density, and everyone else said no. But what I learned from that and what I said at that very meeting was that we had to get to work. And so we started working on connected communities in June of 22. We can go to the next slide. We had our initial housing summit where we began to have the conversations about thriving neighborhoods. Then we spent that summer connecting with stakeholders, asking them what were the barriers, what were they seeing? Then we took that engagement, and my office, we worked with Invest in Neighborhoods, and we did some brainstorm and vision sessions around thriving neighborhoods. And then we did a huge survey. We can go to the next slide. One more. And then we did a big survey, right? 1,200 survey responses. Then we took all of that information from the summer of 22 throughout the fall, winter of 22 into 23, and then we hosted 8 interactive sessions with about 40 neighborhoods represented, about 100 people in attendance, 236 attendees over 8 events, where we did Cincinnati, right? We built out, we had these huge sheets of paper, we made sort of faux neighborhoods, and we told people, all right, here's your neighborhood, 40 people are gonna move in, where are you gonna put them? Right, and we had neighbors start making that decision, and then neighbors, we said, well, do you want an ice cream shop? They say, yeah, okay, well, where are you gonna put it? Well, we're gonna put it right here. Well, the ice cream shop requires 10 parking spaces. Where is that gonna go? They said, well, we don't know. I said, gonna have to tear down the building. Well, we don't wanna tear down the building. Aha, right? And there lies the problem. So next slide. So here we are. Next slide. What are the tools? We're thinking about zoning reform across 6 domains: middle housing, reduce regulatory barriers, parking, affordable development, human scale development, and process improvements. We can go to the next slide. And we're gonna do this along business districts, major corridors, which everyone in this room is very familiar with, and then some citywide. So let's go to the next slide. When we look at our neighborhood business districts, we have 38 of them. Our engagement said people were overwhelmingly in support of increased density around in neighborhood business districts. So we went with that. Next slide. And so we said, we're gonna do a half-mile buffer around our neighborhood business districts so that we'll increase density in those areas. Next slide. And then major corridors. I often say one of the beauties and challenges of Cincinnati is that we often think of ourselves as a city of 52 neighborhoods, in which that is true. But the beauty is when 52 neighborhoods are connected. And so we want to reimagine the city through sort of the lens of SORTA. It's like, what do you think about the city in terms of major corridors? Right? How do you think about your neighborhood being relative to a major corridor? So we said tier 1 would be the proposed bus rapid transit lanes, and then tier 2 would be our east-west routes. And so along major corridors, we go to the next slide, the tier 1 north-south, that we would allow a half-mile buffer for increased density and reduce regulatory barriers. And then on the east-west corridors, just the block face, right? Meaning the actual street that the bus travels along, because we know that some of our east-west buses go through very residential neighborhoods. So when you go to the next slide, this next slide here, you see the total land mass that would be impacted by connected communities. We'll go to the next slide. And so these policies were created 3 ways. Next slide, please. We looked at research. What does the research tell us, right? We looked at what other cities are doing, and then we looked at our engagement. So this is an approach that is informed by 3 prongs, right? Best practices. Next slide. And so under middle housing there's our first piece. Next slide. We are defining that as anything that's from a duplex to the small mixed use. So when we talk about that small mixed use, just think about any Cincinnati business district in that very classic building with a little storefront and then maybe 3 or 4 or 5 units on top, right? That from a duplex to that's what we're defining as middle housing. Next slide. Middle housing is a great pathway to affordable home ownership. Middle housing overwhelmingly was something that communities and neighbors identified in the survey. And we know that it has all of these other environmental impacts as well. So let's go there. And then this next slide tells about how people feel about middle engagement, right? So what we wanted folks to see, and you can click through to the next slide as well. What we wanted folks to see is that in the policy that there was a direct connection to engagement. Row homes are also a great example of middle housing and increasing density. Next slide. And so what we're proposing that in that neighborhood business district and with a quarter mile of those neighborhood business districts, we will allow 2, 3, and 4 families by right, meaning that you don't have to apply for a zoning change in whichever zone allows for housing in that neighborhood. So why is that important? Because many of our neighborhoods are a patchwork of zoning. So you might have one street that is manufacturing and commercial, and then residential mixed use, and then single family. What we're saying is in that corridor or in that quarter mile, whichever zone already allows housing, then you can then build a 2, 3, 4 family by right. Let's go to the next slide. And then major corridors, right? We did that half-mile buffer, and it's the same thing. You can do 2, 3, 4 family units permitted along major corridors by right. Next slide. And then we want to do citywide permit row homes in single-family too. So that means single-family zones with a minimum lot size of 2,000 square feet. Right? I live in Northside, so if you think about those Northside streets, that you can see aesthetically because the spaces between houses are not as great, that a row home will fit in well with the community. And so that's what SF2 is, and we want to say that by right. And so if you look at the slide here, in orange is where there's currently permitted, and then the yellow would be the proposed expansion. Let's go to the next slide. And so when we talk about regulatory barriers, next slide, we're talking about density, we're talking about height, and we're talking about setback. Those are the 3 things we're defining as regulatory barriers. Next slide. And so these are often the tools that restrict affordability and feasibility in development. Next slide. And so when we talk about reducing regulatory barriers, we see near transit and neighborhood business districts and in multifamily zones having lots of more support. This is the sticky point for our city. Citywide, not so much. So this is our approach to that. Let's go to the next slide. We go to the next slide. This is the engagement sort of saying the same thing, getting at the higher point. Next slide. So when we take a closer look at density, essentially what we're saying is, here is a building here, you have 2 units, 2,400 square feet. Next slide. And so instead of doing 2, and that's what's permitted by right, we want to increase that. So next slide, you can do 6 units at 800 square feet. So not changing the form of the building, as we said, but allowing for more units inside. Next slide, please. And again, this is the point. It's actually 12 units per acre. I said half acre, but 12 units per acre supports amenities in neighborhoods. Next slide. And then we know, coupled with robust transportation, that high-density development is an effective tool to promote urban sustainability, thinking about those thriving business districts, pedestrian safety, walkability, et cetera. Next slide. And let's go to the next slide. And so our proposal for reduced regulatory barriers is that in neighborhood business districts, we're not going to change the form, but we will have no density restrictions. So that same slide that I showed you that had the 2 units, you can do 8. Along the major corridors, right, we're going to add a 1-story height bonus. So if in that zone, by right, you can build 4 stories, you'll get a 5-story bonus. If you can build 6 stories, you'll get, you can do 7 stories by right. So it's just going to go 1 story above the current zoning cap. And the reason why is that this is often, these regulatory barriers are often what is asked or requested to make projects work, right? So we're not pulling this randomly out our hat. We're looking back at the past 6, 7 years and saying what has been requested. These are the things that have been requested. Let's go to the next slide. And so when we think about parking, next slide, just want to say parking requirements, most cities have parking minimums. You say if you build a house, you have to have at least 2 parking spaces, right? Parking minimums do not reflect what the market dictates. Sometimes the market dictates that you don't need to put parking in, but developers still have to incur the cost. And whenever a developer incurs a cost, where is it passed to? The consumer, right? So this is a way to think about allowing projects to actually be responsive to the market. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. I talked about why we're changing that. And here, I think this slide is very important to understand. A surface parking space costs $5,000, right? A below ground parking space costs $35,000 per space. So when you think about garages and parking lots are expensive. Let's go to the next slide. And you can see when you think about the viability of neighborhoods, right? This is a block that has no parking minimums. Look how much housing you're able to put on. This is a block which meets the parking minimums based on each house, right? And so if you have a housing crisis, which one are you going to choose, right? Next slide. And then we can begin to talk about the urban heat island effects that it has, and we know in many communities we have like lots of respiratory issues. So let's plow through this. Next slide. And so this is the point that we're making. This is a renovation of an apartment building with parking minimums. Next slide. You have to tear down that beautiful house, but without parking minimums. Next slide. You get to keep that. Insane. Next slide. Engagement around this, basically sort of support what the policy said, right? So let's go to the next slide and go through there. One more. And so our recommendation is to relax parking requirements for new construction within a quarter mile of neighborhood business districts, right? So relaxing means reducing by half. Next slide. And then eliminating parking minimums completely along major corridors, right? So thinking about those bus rapid transit lanes, not having parking minimums because the investment in public transportation is providing a access point for the folks, right? And then let's go to the next slide. And then for citywide existing buildings, so, my friend Sarah finds an existing building in Madisonville that, she wants to renovate. If it's existing and she wants to put a business in, she doesn't then have to meet the parking requirements, right? And that's citywide. All right, let's go through this. Let me skip through the parking minimums. I think you got the point there. Next slide. And so when we talk about affordability, next slide, we think this is incredibly important because zoning updates, restrictive regulation reduces single-family permits by 3%. Each restrictive regulation reduces multifamily permits by 6%, and density restrictions reduce multifamily permits by 36%. And when we think about deep affordability, is where we're going to get that in multifamily housing. Next slide. And next slide. So when we go here, and many folks have, when we propose zoning before, say, well, what have you been doing at the city? Well, we have changed the way we do LIHTC reform. This is the first ordinance that my office introduced in January of 22. We established the Affordable Housing Leverage Fund that we got funded to $112 million, and we're getting that money spent out the door. We legalized accessory dwelling units. We now have a housing dashboard that you can track housing development in real time. We've made significant improvements to code enforcement reforms to protect tenants. We've implemented access to counsel, which comes with rent protections. And so I think 90% of eviction cases, the folks go to court, the landlord has a lawyer, the person who's getting evicted doesn't. We're remedying that with our access to counsel. We reformed the way we did residential tax abatements. We increased funding community development corporations, which you look at development in our city, the neighborhoods that have the most development had strong CDCs. We've increased that funding by almost $3 million. We've started a new home repair fund for moderate income homeowners, and we boosted our down payment assistance. So when we talk about tools in a toolbox, we've put a lot of tools in our toolbox. Next slide, please. And so for affordable development, what we want to say is that low-income housing tax credits is our #1 tool for bringing deep subsidies. Since 2015, we've brought 1,400 units online in this city at 60% AMI or less. What we want to say is that if you apply for a project to get low-income housing tax credits, we're going to give you all of the regulatory bonuses citywide. Next slide. We're almost there. We are rocking through this. Human scale development. Here's important. This is bringing it to life. Let's go to the next slide. Human scale development is what make neighborhoods feel like neighborhoods. Next slide. So a perfect example is that without human scale development, you have a multifamily development. You have cars in the front. You can see the dumpster. Next slide. We're going to offer regulations that say there needs to be treescape, right? Parking in the back. And apparently, and I'm sure that you all know this, but this blew me away. I did not know it was so hard to put a bus stop on a city corner.
It's not physically hard. It's regulatorily hard.
The regulatorily hard. Yes, that's what I said. Regulatory. It's not physically hard. You just take the structure, prefab, put it down. Regulatory hard. So that's something that we have uncovered. So what we're proposing is to streamline that process, right? So that it can be put, it can be requested, it can meet the need. And again, this is a part of matching the investment with SORTA. All right, next slide, and then thinking about landscaping requirements, expanding parking, bike parking, EV requirements, etc. Next slide. And then the last thing, process improvements. Go to the left side. We know that I love serving the city of Cincinnati. I think we have a wonderful city. At times, working with our city isn't the easiest thing to do. So we recognize that there are some process improvements we can do around permitting and et cetera. And so doing a comprehensive review of our zoning code, cleaning it up to make it easier to navigate, making things like outdoor dining approvals easier, et cetera. And again, didn't know this, but it's really hard for food trucks to operate here. So we're gonna make it easy because food trucks are awesome. All right. Let's go to the next slide and then slip through that. Go one more. And then this is the total map of all of the changes and what it would look like in our city. Let's go to the next slide and one more. Oh, this is great. We have an interactive website. You can go on our website. It goes through all of this in depth, and you can enter your address. And you can see how these zoning changes will impact where you live. And then the very last slide that I want to go through and to talk about is that it? Yeah. We had a different PowerPoint. But I want to say this. Here's what's critically important. We have this opportunity when we step out and we look nationally, we don't see large entities, institutions working together collaboratively. This project, Connected Communities, has been sort of like this idea of the city recognizing SORTA's investment and then thinking about our need to grow. And I am very proud of the iteration that happened between our two organizations to arrive at a product like this. And so we are looking to build a large coalition of support for this. The Chamber has endorsed Connected Communities. Ohio Environmental Council is coming very close to endorse it. They're working with us on human scale development. They're highly supportive and quite confident that they will support it. And Cincinnati Children's Hospital is endorsing Connected Communities. And so I would love for SORTA to be a part of this coalition. I tried to get through that as fast as possible without putting everyone to sleep. But thank you so much for your attentiveness and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilman?
I'd like to say, first of all, Councilman Harris, good presentation.
Thank you.
Housing is so important here in Cincinnati, especially when you were showing how we compare with other cities.
Yes.
The housing growth, we're way below. But I have more of a construction, I'm sorry, I have more of a construction
Yep.
question. Did I hear you say that single-family housing is more expensive to build?
Yes. Why is that, right?
Won't have as much, we could put more value if we had 2, 3, 4 family houses, is that what you're saying?
That is exactly right. So you think about sort of like, well, what do you get in terms of rents or who can occupy that space? And so I build a single family home, you have one occupant, right? In a duplex, the reality is even from a home ownership standpoint, I can and even from banks, I can get a loan for a little bit more money because I'll have this rental income that comes right to this. And so now if I'm thinking about building generational wealth and I have a duplex, my family can live in this one part, we can rent out this other part. And then if you just think about from a development perspective, right now you have two folks paying rent in this
More
in this
expensive on a
space.
per unit basis.
Yes, exactly. Per unit is to be more exact. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lon.
Just one question that I didn't see. What would be the lowest amount of rent for any one unit?
So that all.
Big issue.
Yeah, that's a big issue. That's a big issue.
While we have the new bill coming in, they still can't afford it.
Yeah, so zoning will not, we won't be able to do with changing our zoning policies. I won't be able to say, and then rents are going to be, 20% lower. But what it does allow for is it does allow for projects that, and we have a number of wonderful affordable developers here. I'll give you a perfect example. Over the Rhine Community Housing is doing 44 units of permanent supportive housing. Needed housing, right? State tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, city dollars, they are a proven partner. We passed a notwithstanding ordinance to support that project a year ago, but because they're held up in zoning regulations with the community, that project still hasn't been built. So now the project has gotten more expensive, right? And so what we are proposing, what we're saying is that even for the affordable developments, where those rent prices will be able to be lower because you can do more by right, shortening the amount of time. We have a lot of deeply affordable neighborhoods in our community that don't see development because they're not connected. So when you imagine connecting folks, being able to connect people to job centers through bus rapid transit, now places like North Fairmount where you can still get a good value, we're creating the opportunity for those neighborhoods to be able to grow and to thrive so that rents that folks are seeing, maybe have seen in this city 10, 15 years ago, you're able to create that value in other communities. So as I said, I can't answer in terms of the actual individual price of the apartment, but the opportunity to build deeply affordable becomes much greater when you can build certain types of housing in certain time frames.
Because I'm looking at the ranges.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the idea, if you get enough supply, right, then the natural economics will work itself
Right.
out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We still have owners that still have control of the rent because of the demand.
That's right.
Well, even if the demand or the supply changes, that's not going to guarantee they're going to reduce it.
Well, but I would push back on that. I would say yes, because if our partners at the Apartment Association of Realtors, property managers and people own, they test their rent prices all the time based on demand because they know, right, the thing that if you want to charge high rents and you have 3 20-unit buildings open within a block from you, you have to adjust because now people have choice. And so I always tell people, think about those moments where you drive around and you might see apartment complexes half months off rent if you sign a lease by June 1. That's the financial incentive that they need, but we don't see that anymore. No landlord is advertising any reduction in rent to get people. We saw that during COVID, right? Because supply and demand were out of whack because people were leaving cities. So there is it really does impact rents when there is supply that makes folks adjust.
And no truth to the rumor that that's just June 1st is my birthday. That's not why he said June 1st. Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
Less of a question and just some commentary. Thank you for this. I've seen iterations of this over time, and this is just incredible policy. And I can think back to 2020 with Haled and Mark and others being a part of an Urban Land Institute session to really start building a framework for something like this. SORTA has been at the table, and the city's invited SORTA to the table from, months after passing a levy. I mean, this is a real sea change in my mind for how a city plans for a transit system, and recognizing that we're building something that matters and that's valuable is just huge. And I would argue that this is maybe the number one ridership development policy that anyone can do, is to build more housing near the service we're providing in a way that makes folks get on the bus. So when we talk about what our ridership goals are, we can achieve them by all the really great work that our team does. We can add to them by all the great sort of supporting policies that other local governments are doing. And so I don't know. I don't know what mechanisms we have to say specifically that we're supportive of this.
So
but I would love us to do that.
So two things. So I agree. This is exactly what we were trying to get to with BRT, right? It's a perfect synergy working, and what we've said why we were doing it. So I think it's fantastic. And I was going to introduce and propose that we support Connected Communities as a board.
Second.
Pete would support that. So happy to have discussion, though. I know this was kind of a surprise, and if people wanted to table it for a month, we could do that too. But
I support it. If I may jump in, it's hard to get me more excited about BRT, but this actually makes me even more excited. It's a great synergy, and there's future corridors as well beyond the other two, and this can prove out the impact of BRT and support future projects as well as we look out over the next few decades of development. So very, very exciting. I fully support it.
okay.
I also enthusiastically support communities and would love to see it.
And I'll be brief because we have so much on the agenda. Thank you, Councilman Harris, for coming. But I have to say this because nobody's here from the planning department of the city, but I used to chair the planning commission for 5 years. And
Thank you for your service.
Lord knows, a lot of them did in those hearings. Lord knows the density was talked about all the time, and the cooperation between SORTA and this endeavor and the changes and the incentive to add more density in our business districts is just really refreshing. And thanks for bringing it forward to us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Then I would propose that we go ahead and vote to support Connected Communities as a board and as an organization. Is that a voice or a roll? Voice. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say right. All right. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you all so much.
All right, Gwen, we're right on time for you. No, that was great. And so John will be brief here, but I know there's been a lot of news around happenings downtown near Government Square through CPS and things like that. And I wanted the board to get a little update on that. So this, I don't want to rush through this, but I don't want to keep you here till midnight. But I think this is an important topic. So please, if you have questions, let's make sure they get answered. Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
John.
Good evening, everybody. Like Craig said, let's hit on a few high points here, some key points to note about Government Square, our operations through it as a key connection point. This conversation also brings up extra service. So let's revisit some history there. What was extra service? Some key facts about it. But then let's talk about student transportation today as well. What are we doing regarding student transportation, finding solutions to challenges there, and then next steps as we engage a number of stakeholders addressing this topic. So Government Square, our most popular connection point, and we're operating there 24/7, 365. 35 routes touch some point of Government Square. That's all areas. So wrapping around from Area D, on the corner there of 5th and Walnut, east on 5th, and then up Main, up to Area H there on the corner of 6th Street. And you see here Government Square activity, all boardings there, and then all student boardings as well. So you see with the increase of our service as we roll out the Reinventing Metro plan, substantial increases in usage of Government Square, but then also a decrease as the network continues to get more efficient. as we create more direct service, more crosstown service, that decreases the need overall to transfer downtown. So extra service. Extra service ended with the 21 through 22 academic school year, and that was fixed route service. That's important to note. In terms of its size and scale, extra service required about 300 daily trips and 90 some buses at a cost annually to CPS of about $8 million. Another key point to note about extra service, this was service that was always open to the general public. Very key as we remained compliant with federal regulations in this space. It's also important to remember that 1/3 of CPS students, about 1/3 of their students, were issued regular Metro passes, namely for the need to attend extracurricular activities. So transportation outside of the typical school peak transit time, 1/3 of students were already issued and riding Metro service. This ended with the 21 through 22 academic year as we worked with CPS staff to develop a plan to use the fixed route network. For a number of reasons, a few are listed here. We had some reliability concerns, and we met that head on with this change. In April and May of 21, we missed 700 extra service trips. If you had an extra service pass, your pass was good on an extra service route. It was not good on the regular network. So imagine the challenge when that extra service bus didn't show up. We had labor market challenges. We were in the midst of the pandemic and seeking to grow our service thanks to the passage of Issue 7. So how we could address our capacity issues and our reliability issues were certainly key drivers to this change. It's also important to note that it's against FTA regulations for us to provide school service. And during the 21 to 22 academic year, CPS issued an RFP for exactly that. We are prohibited from providing dedicated exclusive school service, but CPS certainly has the option to provide such direct service through a yellow bus contract. Next slide, please. So student transportation today. And the next slides here, as we scroll through these, give you a sense of the challenge of transportation throughout the district. Aiken High School here is an example. You see the green dot where Aiken High School is over on the west side, and then the student origin points throughout the district getting to that green dot at the same time of day and then departing pretty much at the same time
Everyone
of day.
find the green dot? Or no?
I'm sorry?
It's like a Where's Waldo. So
Anybody see it?
Yeah,
There's a door prize if you can find it.
right there.
Got it there? And then, yeah, so this one here, we're shifting, so Clark Montessori over there to the east side there. There you go. There's
yeah.
green.
Oh, she-
As we scroll through here, you can see we've got a transportation challenge for students from anywhere, can go anywhere in terms of a high school. So having a transportation solution, again, same times in the morning, same time in the evening, how we get that done is certainly a big challenge. You can scroll through there, Natalie, just to get a sense of the size and scale of this operation.
How much further on that? That's not good. I didn't predict that.
So regardless of high school, something that you might
my
equate with an area of town, an area of town or a side of town, the transportation challenge is there nonetheless. So what's our plan? What has been our plan, and what are we doing about it?
I think I want to comment.
Yes.
So even during extra service, many folks had to transfer anyway for the same reason. You're trying to get people from everywhere to everywhere in a direct line. It just almost isn't possible, or is it financially feasible? Right, is really the question.
I'd also like to add that 1/3 of the students, not because of extracurricular activity, 1/3 of the students CPS chose to put on regular service to reduce their cost. So even when we were running extra service, 1/3 of the students were actually doing exactly what all the students are doing now. And it was actually closer to about 40% of the students used regular service.
In fact, when Daryl and I first met with the school board after this issue came up, they brought 4 examples of what they thought were horrible commutes. And I said, how did these kids get to school last year? And they said, what do you mean? I said, were they taking extra service last year? And what we found out was none of them were. So the worst routes haven't really changed because you're trying to go from one far end of the county to another.
with the exception of with reinventing Metro, we have
Right, we made it better. That's right. On average, 10 minutes faster, right? Okay.
New routes because of students, the student issue.
So for our plan to meet the transportation challenge, we utilize a regular network. We do that through about 9,000 CPS student passes at approximately a $3 million annual cost to CPS. Around 200 students boarded Government Square, so out of those 9,000 passes, 200 students on a weekday afternoon on average. That's a January number. And we continue to improve the network and streamlining student trips. You see the chart over there on the right. When we first rolled out this model in August of 21, about half the students had a direct route. That number is now 70% as we continue to roll out new service like routes 22 and 36 that go cross town. We also spend a significant amount of time and effort and attention through our CPD detail, our police officer detail at Government Square, and through their own reporting, it shows through November of 23, despite some of the recent headlines, through November of 23 compared to calendar year 22, a 57% reduction in juvenile incidents in terms of their interaction with CPD and activity down at Government Square. As for next steps, we continue to engage with a number of stakeholders regarding the transportation challenges in Government Square. Several listed here: CPS, City of Cincinnati, Cincinnati Police, 3CDC, and others. Our action plan includes increased use of our officer detail and increased Metro supervisor presence. We're meeting and greeting each bus operator as they arrive, checking on the operator, making sure that customers know where they're going, checking in on students. Our supervisors are present throughout these PM peak hours. You probably already know we've also moved all Area E activity there on the corner of 5th and Walnut to 5th and Main. Area E transportation is all now at Area F, and we're studying that impact on traffic and our customers as well. We're also analyzing student pass use at Government Square, and we've already engaged CPS and through CPS their families, identifying students that are using their passes downtown, but maybe they don't need to travel downtown. They don't need to transfer because they have a more direct option to and from school. The superintendent and their staff have been great partners in this area as well. We also continue to explore innovative technology regarding our bus passes. There's been discussion about whether we could limit student use of the service, limit the pass to the routes that serve a student's point of destination and school. That also has several important things to consider. We have to continue to meet students' extracurricular needs and then also varied points of origin and destination. They might have different caregivers. They might be staying at different places during the week. There's also a significant portion of CPS students that are homeless. How do we account for that if the goal is to actually limit students to specific routes from specific origin? These are very important things to consider, as well as the fact that the great majority of students are using the network without issue. That's certainly something to consider as we address the size and scale of this problem, putting in context of the whole. And we will continue the stakeholder discussion on Government Square renovations as well. We've shared our plans with a number of stakeholders, got some good feedback, but that discussion and others certainly continue. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And I think it's, it's interesting. The data will show, right, a couple hundred boardings in the morning, a couple hundred in the afternoon in Government Square with the students, which doesn't seem like that many, but it's more than we had before. And I do think there are some, the incidents are higher profile and maybe more dangerous than they've been before, which attracts a lot of attention. And so I think it's an important point to remember that most students are using the system as intended and doing it well, right? And so I don't want to restrict what they have, but we want to make everybody feel safe and be safe, right, while using our services. So a difficult situation. I just wanted to make sure we all had the facts, right? It's easy to get caught up in the noise and not know the specifics. So if you have questions for John or the team, you can ask now, or we'll continue to try to make sure everybody gets updates as we have them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Forgive me for prolonging the meeting here, but we did meet with Superintendent Wright, and she talked about the difficulty, again, in getting the children from home to the school on time. But the two videos they kept showing, according to our police chief, was really coming not from CPS, but from the Don School. And Mr. Ramon Davenport said the problem they had was they went out and bought buses to transport the students to school, but the buses were not they were not yellow buses. I think he said they were purple buses.
That's right.
And because of that, they couldn't use those buses. And he said the absentee went up to 70% when that happened. And I don't know if there's anything that we could do to help them to get their buses back on the street. But I'm not trying to put all the blame on the Don School. I'm just trying to look at trying to help the Don School with the transportation.
So what
sure.
Don School is currently doing is they are currently buying Metro passes for their students. They go down to the sales office, they buy Metro passes, and they pass those passes out to their students. I also want to correct something that's been in the paper for at least the last month and a half. Don did not buy those buses, their purple buses, from Metro. Over and over in the newspaper, they say that Don bought those buses from us. I'm not sure where they bought the buses from. They did not buy the buses from Metro. They are trying to get the state to overturn the regulation that keeps them from using the buses. To this point in time, they have not been successful. They do have a yellow bus contract for their elementary school students, but they choose not to use that contract for their high school students, and they buy bus passes at regular prices for their students from Metro.
Yeah, so I think it was two things. It was having the stop sign comes out from the bus and the color of the bus. And we've talked about, is there some way we can help them get the buses repainted or something like that, which seems like a relatively straightforward solution. So I think that's well noted.
I appreciate you putting this on the agenda, Craig, and then just to Daryl and team, I know you have spent a considerable amount of time on this, and I hope that all of our partners hear us as collaborators and looking to be problem solvers, and just appreciate that's the approach you're taking, because this is not a simple problem to solve, especially when information isn't always accurate that's on the table. So
yeah,
thank you for that.
And first point that we can't provide extra service.
Yeah, I didn't appreciate that until I joined the board. So thank you for making it clear.
Just for clarity, the routes 22 and 36, the new ones, is that in response to the student issue? Or does
It is. It helps with student travel patterns. We can analyze by school. They're coming from the west side to east side schools, and then vice versa. Where before these routes that require some transferring downtown to make such long, really cross-district connections, the 22 and 36 helps streamline a lot of those trips.
And can you help me understand the $3 million, the CPS part of that slide?
Sure, that's a rough number, reflects the pass cost. We charge CPS a per pass price. That's in the neighborhood of about $3 million annually.
So,
per pass times 9,000 passes.
So if I could, the two crosstown routes we added, they were always in the Reinventing Metro plan. We moved them up because it's not just to move the students from the east side to the west side. A lot of our citizens also move from the east side to the west side and back. And this makes a one-seat ride for our community as well, not just for the CPS students. And when we were running extra service, CPS paid the actual cost of the miles and hours on extra service. But for all of the students that rode our regular service, they paid for a pass. When we discontinued running the extra service, they now just pay for the passes. That's the difference.
Who's paying for the police officer at Government Square and all that?
We are.
At $1.5 million?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But the safety of our riders are important, right? So.
But I think the city has a responsibility as well.
So does the district.
Yeah, and they have people there too. So, yes, absolutely, right. We're all trying to figure out how to contribute to solving.
And I'm glad, I'm glad to hear that we already had that stop in our plan, rather than reacting as if we were out of place.
Yes.
Okay, you know, if we need to at least understand what the real issue is before we make any moves. So I hope we're moving based on data and not reactionary
Yes, ma'am.
responses. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's why I skipped the planning option.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right, we got 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Okay. All right. Then everything else approved. Say aye. I'm going to make a. We have a number of visitors here that are interested in a particular topic. So Sarah, I'm going to have you go first.
Okay.
Of the committee report as. Sorry. Executive decision. If you're ready, I can tell jokes until you're ready to go. If you want.
I want to get the small ones done
We're
first.
gonna go to transit. Sorry.
Yeah, I need you to speak into the.
Okay, so at our meeting last week, we had a number of agenda items, but before we get to those, I just want to reiterate Craig's comment about the ceremony that we had last week, which was really wonderful to celebrate the awards that were given out to 29 different projects. If you were not there, you should look up picture. You missed out. I mean, there was drama, there was a lot of excitement, and look up the pictures online if you can, because it was just a really nice event. So good job
Can I
to
make a
the
comment
team.
on that?
Yeah.
I thought the mayor's comments were right on point. If nothing more, you've got to listen to the words that he spoke, and he spoke around that table.
Agreed. So at the meeting, we started out by reviewing the annual report of the MTIF, and if you haven't looked at it, it is in Govenda. Please take a look at it because it outlines how the funds have been spent over the last 3 years. Most of the round 1 projects have been completed, and most of the round 2 projects are either in the design phase or in the construction phase, and you can read all those details in the report. But for today, we just have one action item. Every year, we have the opportunity to revisit the guidelines for the MTIF, and we have a few small technical tweaks that have been suggested. So Steve Anderson is going to run through the presentation and tell us a little bit about. Is he here?
Andy's going to
okay.
talk through the technical changes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve will provide any corrections required.
Support, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
Got
you.
it. Sorry, Steve. Where are you? All right. Sorry about that.
So, thank you. At the committee, we talked about a number of technical changes that are essentially cleaning up this document. As we talked about earlier, this is our 3rd going into 4th year of this major program, and we have the privilege of being able to adjust the program as we go through in the guidelines. The committee came to consensus around 3 technical changes. The first was that we needed to clarify an applicant. So when we talked about how many applications could be provided or how we're assessing the 50% cap, we would do that by applicant, not necessarily jurisdiction. And that's just on next slide. That is one more slide, please. That's a clarification there on page 4. The second main technical update was combining appendices E and F. It was just confusing for the folks using it. So the next few slides are just technical changes to allow us to combine appendices E and F. And then if we go to the next slide.
Next minute.
There we go. One more. Keep going. One more. There we are. On this slide, we had discussed a minimum scoring level. And the committee discussed that if projects scored below 3, it wouldn't be funded. And that represents a very small number of projects to date. But the committee discussed that would be a way to keep quality projects funded for the region. And that remained consistent.
Yeah, it's a 0 to 10 scoring system, right? So
0 to 10 scoring system, and projects that scored below 3 would not be funded, and that reached consensus at the committee as well. So from a technical perspective, those were the 3 main changes as discussed and agreed upon at committee.
That's right. So in addition to those items discussed at committee, there was also a policy discussion which had to do with the Western Hills Viaduct and how we handle that $14.5 million as part of the the MTIF process. Pete made a motion at that meeting to adjust the guidelines so that the city and the county share in that 14.5 million. And I think that we did not take any action on that and wanted to bring the discussion to the board and see if other people would like to discuss the Western Hills Viaduct.
I'll jump in. I think, as I said at the committee meeting, I am open to the right set of parameters that make this that find the right balance. And so I think what I discussed at the meeting was some combination of splitting the viaduct and a cap on the number of projects that could be funded rather than applied for but could be funded by any one jurisdiction. So I'm open to what the right partnership is there. I think just finding that balance.
And maybe just as a point of clarification for folks, if you remember, we have an existing cap of no more than half the funding can go to any single jurisdiction in a year. So how the viaduct is treated swings those funds around, right?
Yep.
So I think there's a recommendation that I think is getting a lot of support to split the viaduct 50-50 between the city and the county, and then limit it, any entity to 3 projects, not including the viaduct in that calculation.
Right. I know that's what I've heard from the various political interested parties the last week or so too. So I think that's what's on the table. Yeah. So the change would be split the viaduct between the two. And the viaduct's always been a little bit complicated project because at the time we were still sorting through how we were treating it. The county did sign the same application, although the application came from the city. And so the fact that the city and the county seem to be on agreement to split it is what kind of swayed me in this case. And then the 3 projects is just to make sure that we're focused on good projects, and that also should allow us to get more projects through. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you want to make it?
Does anyone else have
You
any
moved that, or
questions
did
or
I-
I mean, I
comments?
think I moved it in committee. I don't know if that's still how that works. I don't know.
Got to remove it here. Wait, not remove.
Yeah.
Also,
Make
move it.
another
Move
motion.
again.
You would need to adjust your
So
motion.
okay, so let's see if I can Robert's Rules of Order this to completion. Do I need to move to? Can I just table my previous amendment and start the motion and start? We're going to do that.
Sure.
That was
Okay, so I would move that we amend the scoring to split the Western Hills Viaduct 50-50 between the city and the county, and that we would implement a cap on projects awarded to no more than 3 in a cycle. Recognizing that the Western Hills Viaduct is not
already
an
been approved,
annual award, it's already approved. So 3 plus the viaduct.
And the 50% per jurisdiction is already on the books.
That's already on
And
the books.
Yes.
The debt service is what we're talking about for the viaduct on the 15-year bond. It used to be 25, but we reduced it to
So,
15.
yeah, it was 15, now it's down to 13. Yeah.
13.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
And also accept the technical clarifications.
I also add that to my my motion.
Thank you.
Second.
So it's been reseconded. The motion and it has been reseconded. Is there other discussion?
Yeah,
That's-
probably moved and seconded. Any
Okay.
questions, comments? No? I think this is a roll.
Yep, we can do it. Mr. Bryce?
Yes.
Mr. Etheridge?
Yes.
Mr. Driehaus?
Yes.
Mr. Hinton?
Yes.
Mr. Cussy?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Ms. Moss?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. All right. And you're sharing your home videos from the ceremony. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. We're going to be back to order. If the visitors are here for that section, we'd love for you to stay, but you don't have to. Rod, are you going to update us on finance?
Driehaus's.
Oh.
Thanks to Rod.
Should we do the minutes
Rod chaired
first?
it. We should do the minutes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm so excited for getting to this. The minutes are in your books that were shared in advance of the meeting. Hopefully, you had a chance to look at them. I would move that we approve them.
Second.
Looking for a second. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Sorry. Dan and Rod, why don't you guys go now?
Thanks to Rod for chairing the committee. We have a brief report tonight. Andy's going to report out on the financials in a little bit, but the only action item, well, one highlight on the P&L is that it was a favorable month. The weather affected our income. 2 days, CPS was shut down. That affected our ridership. Also, there was a week of significant rain that affected our ridership on the income side. But really, we were very close to budget. On the expense side, though, we were very far below what we had budgeted on the expenses. So it was a very positive start to the year. And Andy will give more detail in a bit. The only action item.
Yeah, actually, it's on there by mistake. We don't have to approve that here. We only approve it at the committee meeting.
He just reports out on it.
Yeah.
So, but the only thing to report out to, you're saying we don't have to approve the investment of funds?
Don't.
No, that's a
That was
mistake.
just done in
then.
committee. Yep.
Well, that's easy.
But it's good to see we're doing
Percentages are in
great.
line. We're good.
They're still doing great, and we have lots of money available to invest in the BRT. So we're excited about that too. Sorry.
Okay, I guess there's nothing to vote on. All right, thanks.
Sorry.
All right, if you say so.
All right, Blake.
All right, I do have some action items. And speaking of BRT, we kept one action item off, and that's something that we want to approve and note. And then we have a large number of consent agenda items. Before we get to those, we did talk about park and rides. There was a lot of good news. I don't know. I don't think I'd be very popular if I went through all of it. I'll trust that Daryl's going to hit the highlights in his comments, or Andy. So we did go over the new branding identity, which is very important. You might see Metro Now over there has the new wheel. I'm not sure what the right color or thing to call it is because I'm a data analyst and not a designer, but I like the colors. I'm excited about that. Ridership, we were impacted by weather in January. OTP up, missed trips down. We had a very interesting conversation on Red Bike. It's important to note. We were looking to define what staff should do. There's a lot of commentary on the ties, which are lovely. And there was some reticence on going too far with Red Bike. And what we've asked staff to do is to look at what are the real opportunities for Metro and Red Bike to work together. And also, what's the coalition of support for Red Bike? And then we are keeping the conversation going. We just wanted to know a lot more about what's going on. And then we had a BRT Phase 2 project development, which I think is very exciting and leads into our first action item, which is 122-2023, and the approval of the Phase 2, I think is what we would call it, right? For BRT design, construction. Is that right?
This is the design portion.
Engineering and design. I'm sorry, that's the right wording. And this is going to take several years, but this is huge for Metro, for the region. So I kept that off the consent agenda so we could vote on that individually. I'll move it. Anybody want a second? Any conversation?
Second.
Did we get a second?
Okay, properly moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns? If you remember, we did approve this essentially when we talked about, we committed to the FTA that we were willing to do it at least. So the number shouldn't be a big surprise, but so with no conversation, why don't we?
We'll do the roll call. Mr. Bryce? Mr. Etheridge?
Yes.
Mr. Driehaus?
Yes.
Mr. Hinton? Yes. Mr. Cassie?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Ms. Moss?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson? Ms. Sheets? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
There's several items on the consent agenda that I do want to note, and I will go through each of the items. I think it is important that we note them. First is fixed route planning software. Excited about the opportunities that this is going to introduce for efficiencies in the system, and staff did report that this would pay for itself with the improvements that it would enable. Metro Now vehicles. So these are one of the elements we need to expand additional zones. We have some bridge repairs that we have to do, medical exam services. I think this one was unbudgeted, and it has to do with expanding the number of people we're trying to bring in to address our needs. Some PR consulting, landscaping for our facilities, towing, bulk motor oil, and staffing and recruiting services, which are connected mostly to temp services that we need. So I would move that we pass all these consent agenda items.
So moved.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Anybody want to pull anything off? No? See, when you let the long stuff happen early, this is where we get to.
What's the Riverside Bridge repairs by ATR? That's just for, just to
Yes.
look at the bridge, technical reports of it?
Yes, they did. HDR did a preliminary view of the bridge to ensure, to get us an idea of timeline of urgency. And now they're going to do the detailed design of what needs to be done to repair. So it's the engineering side of it. Yep.
Any
Roll
other
call.
comments? Sorry. Thank you. Let's go ahead.
Mr. Bryce? Mr. Etheridge?
Yes.
Mr. Driehaus?
Yes.
Mr. Hinton? Mr. Kazee?
Yes.
Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Ms. Motts? Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Ms. Sheets? And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
That's all from planning and ops.
All right, that's awesome. We're making progress now. Good work. Thank you, Blake and team. Andy, you can take us through the financial results?
Sir. Okay.
Hold your applause till the end of it, please.
So, January financial results. As you all know, January is our first year of our 2024 budget cycle. So we're always eager to see results in the first month. We'll walk through those this evening very quickly. If we go to slide 4, we see our passenger revenue in January, as usual, is higher than December. With all the holidays in December, we have lower ridership and lower passenger revenue. That starts naturally to increase as we get into the second half of the school year and all those good things. Slightly below budgeted figures, as Mr. Driehaus mentioned, because we had some weather events that dampened ridership in January. Next slide shows our expense profile, which again is very similar to what we've seen over the last quarter. And we're tracking, as mentioned before, under budget with expenses. The next slide gives you the summary of our P&L. Revenue was just slightly unfavorable to budget by about $17,000, but expenses were dramatically favorable to budget by just under $900,000 or 6.5%. That led to a surplus for the month of about $500,000, where we were actually budgeting a deficit for the month. This was discussed in committee that sales tax revenues are not smooth throughout the year, and they actually pick up in the last quarter of the year with holiday spending. So we actually budget deficits for a number of months throughout the year. We budgeted about a $400,000 deficit in January, and we actually came in about $500,000 in surplus. So the net of that is around $900,000 positive variance. We went through the revenue slide where we were largely on budget. I'll highlight expenses. We were favorable to budget on wages and benefits, and happily favorable to budget on fuel by about 17.6%. We had a fuel hedging report in the Finance Committee that shows us we're seeing some prices trending down, and our hedging is working in our favor at this point in time. All other was favorable to budget, and that's largely a result of timing of consultant projects in 2024. The next slide shows the detailed P&L. Just take you to the bottom line there, where you can see our $458,000 positive surplus compared to the budget of $419,000 deficit. Feeling good about our first month as we get into 2024. And the last slide just shows our investment of funds reserve summary. As was mentioned before, the $36 million for BRT project development, that contract that you just approved is accounted for in our reserve summary. When you combine that with our other capital projects and federal match requirements and reserve requirement, our investment and funds reserve summary is largely spoken for, and we'll manage that throughout the calendar year. Happy to take any questions about the financial statement.
The sales tax
Yeah.
revenue, we take the projections directly from UC. It's what the city.
And they look at other data
Oh,
from
yeah.
the previous 2 years that we've done
Yes.
this? Okay.
It's what the county does.
Whole team of economists.
Yes.
Correct. Our challenge in
Never right.
budgeting is that our expenses are relatively similar across the 12 months, but the sales tax fluctuates. And so that's why we see deficits and surpluses throughout the calendar year, but we've budgeted about a $2.5 million surplus at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And we're on track.
I'd also like to point out that I think when Trent first joined, we were getting less than 1% on our money, and you drove us up to this 5%, so thank you.
Huge contribution.
Hey, we're debt-free, so
There's
it pays off.
a few candidates would like you to say that instead of that.
I was
when we
trying
used
to make it
have
sound better than what you did.
Deficits every month?
Any
All right.
questions for Andy?
I was. I was the chair.
I will be brief. This month, we were on the Hill. We met with Senator Brown, Representative Landsman, the offices of J.D. Vance, and Representative Winstrip. We also had meetings with the head of the FTA, Noria Fernandez, and the team at the FTA. We spent time talking about all the amazing and exciting things that we're doing here and the things that we'll be asking for in the near future to help us further reinventing Metro.
And I'm going to interrupt you. For those that weren't at the committee meeting, it's former Secretary Nuria, right?
Yes.
Administrator, because she resigned during the meeting, I believe. I don't know what happened that meeting, but
She definitely resigned the day that we had a meeting with her, but it was before our meeting. I'm also happy to say we were awarded $2.8 million in grants from the Ohio Department of Transportation. We've already talked about our infrastructure signing event. If you didn't get a chance to come this year, the next one you should come. They're always a lot of fun. It is fun giving away money. Ohio Loves Transit Week was February 11th through the 17th. We got a chance to go down and thank our riders, thank our employees for all the work that they do for us. And if you, there were a few of the board members that were at the SBA signing event, Small Business Administration signing event, where we are working together to make sure we continue to increase our small business spend. That was a wonderful event. National Transit Employee Appreciation Day is on March 18th. We will be at all the garages as well as in the building to thank all of the transportation employees for everything they do for this region. For the board, our Golden Bus Award for Employees of the Year will be on March the 21st at Music Hall. By now, you all should have gotten an invitation. If you have not received your invitation, let us know. We'd love to see you all there. We will have free rides on Election Day. And we had a bus, one of the new bus wraps out on Tuesday of last week, so everyone could see our new bus wrap. That concludes Metro on the Move, unless you all have any questions.
Can you give us the schedule for the National Transit Employee Appreciation Day? You know, how, you know, give us the schedule.
Absolutely, we will. We'll email it out to the entire board. Thank you.
okay. Anybody new business to bring up?
The letter that we all have in front of us.
Oh,
At some point, will staff give us an update on it?
We didn't all get it.
Oh,
Some people
sorry.
got it earlier.
Sorry.
But so you want to talk about? So Blue
I have
Ash
a letter in front
requested
of
that
me.
we.
Wow.
Yeah.
Send it down.
You've seen it's.
Oh. Essentially, it's from the city of Blue Ash expressing interest in purchasing some of the rail that we're so I just would
Yeah.
love to
I get
report
so
on that
many
at some point.
letters, sorry.
So, sorry.
Say that
It's
again?
addressed to Daryl. He doesn't remember.
It's
seeing
a letter from the city of Blue Ash who's interested in purchasing some of the rail that we are dispossessing.
We got
so,
that one
yeah.
last.
Yeah,
at
yeah.
committee.
Yes. No, we're good. So I think there's quite a bit of interest in the rail right of ways as we try to sort our way through it. I think folks remember that we've had to talk to the FTA about what could or couldn't happen with this. We've had to get appraisals, right? Every time the appraisals, because you have to, if we were to sell it, you have to sell it for the market value. Nobody wants to pay market value. They're all interested in having it given to them. So lots of discussion going on. So we don't have a formal response to them yet, but we will.
And all the money has
The
to go
committee
back.
working on that?
Yeah, Sarah's got that one. Sorry.
Right.
And the money that it's sold for, the percentage that the FTA paid for it, that has to go back to the FTA. We can't use that money for anything other than to pay the FTA back based on market value.
But certainly, if there's, this is what's come up before, like some of the railways that aren't being used, they have bridges that we have to invest in and repair. It wasn't one of the ones that was talked about today, but the challenge gets to be there's expense of carrying it. So in the long run, we've reviewed this a few times. It may not make sense for us too, unless there are transit needs for it. But most folks that have inquired, we'd happy to engage with them, but they generally don't want to say, "I'll pay you top dollar." They say,
Right.
"Okay." All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. You be careful.
Take care, man.
Good to see you.